Tonight, we begin a new series called Retirement Ready. For millions of Americans, having enough money in savings is one of the biggest challenges, especially when you consider recent Wall Street losses that are shrinking 401k plans. CBS's Mark Strassman breaks down the numbers.
$24.50.
Daniel Fitzpatrick's original goal, retire at 60. He's now 64. Fitzpatrick's a senior planning executive making low six figures with money worry.
The benchmarks move as I get older.
What's your timeline for retirement?
Work till I'm 70, and then to look for something part-time afterward.
The national average for one person to live comfortably in retirement, roughly $967,000 in savings. Every retirement scenario is different, but that's $74,000 a year for the average American worker to live out his retirement. What's troubling, the typical retirement account's balance, $144,000.
The average Social Security benefits that people draw are about $20,000 every year. And if you are just relying on Social Security, it will be very difficult to make ends meet.
And yet, 40% of retirees say Social Security is their only source of income. Waiting to retire at 70 maximizes Social Security monthly benefits for the financial challenges of aging retirees.
The biggest expense that goes up are these medical expenses.
How many more dishes are you going to make?
Georgians like Fitzpatrick need about $850,000 to retire, about what he has in the bank.
There's still a fingers crossed quality to all of this.
If I had to retire and had to live on what I have right now, I'd be much more worried.
At least he's on track. In millions of older households, retirement shimmers like a shiny but unaffordable object. Mark Strassman, CBS News, Atlanta.
Now to our continuing series, Retirement Ready. If you have access to a 401k or traditional pension in your job, consider yourself to be lucky. Nearly 57 million Americans work for an employer that does not offer a retirement savings plan. Tonight, CBS's Janet Shamlian takes a look at some of the consequences.
You guys are trying to get away.
A walk with Rosie and Logan is a rare break for Marianne O'Connor.
Good puppies.
Then she's back on her laptop, juggling two jobs, sometimes up to 11 hours a day.
What did you think you'd be doing at 66?
Oh, I would hope to be retired.
And what are you doing at 66?
I'm working my butt off.
No savings, no 401k, not even enough to cover an emergency. She sold her home and with two other women bought a smaller one, living together to save money.
Thank you very much. How has that been?
Well, it's been a matter of life and death.
Roughly half of all Americans ages 55 to 66 have nothing saved for retirement.
Spicy, yeah.
O'Connor knew she'd be in that group, adopting and raising 3 children as a single mom.
I have a live for now philosophy, I guess.
How's that serving you now?
Oh, it's horrible.
You can always improve your situation.
For her and others without a nest egg, experts say it's not too late to make a plan. Continue to work, lower your cost of living, save what you can, delay Social Security benefits until 70 to get the largest monthly check possible, and avoid risky investments to make up for lost time.
The higher the promised returns, the more you want to do in real research.
To enjoy her senior years, O'Connor's gotten creative.
It's nice to not be alone.
Forming the trip planning company Kindred Women Travelers, allowing her to see a slice of the world, even if she's on the job while doing it.
What would you say to younger women?
I guess I would now say that they need to start planning as early as they can.
Financial challenges for many, tarnishing the golden years of retirement.
Yes, I know.
Janet Shamlian, CBS News, Cumberland, Rhode Island.
Tonight, we begin exploring an anxiety-producing question. Do I have enough saved for retirement? Nearly 40% of households face a lower standard of living in retirement. Over the next few months, Eye on America will examine the uncertainties of retirement and retirement planning. And we start with Jill Schlesinger and a couple in Florida who had retired but are now back on the job.
This is certainly not part of Larry Gessick's retirement plan. The 77-year-old electrician by trade leaves at 5:30 a.m. and heads for his part-time job unloading trailers at a local supermarket in St. Petersburg, Florida, for $14.75 an hour. His wife, Joyce, 66, prepares for her workday, making $14 an hour as a full-time legal administrator.
It's not really a retirement.
What is it?
It's working every day.
The Gessicks came out of retirement not because they wanted to, but because they had to, and are among the 11 million Americans, 1 in 5 over 65, who are still working.
It's hard, 77, still busting my butt.
So I call it the work, retire, repeat syndrome.
Labor economist Teresa Ghilarducci says work is the new retirement.
More than half of the people who are retired right now do not have enough money to be retired.
Who's to blame for all of this?
I blame policymakers who experimented with our retirement system 40 years ago, and they are not saying the experiment failed.
That experiment is what we know today as the 401k, named after part of a 1978 law that offered companies an alternative to the traditional pension plan.
The thought was that Americans just need a little bit of financial literacy and they can just save on their own.
But in fact, many of today's older workers were never taught enough about saving and investing for retirement.
I grew up on a farm. Nobody there instructed any of us to put money aside and make your own way later on down the road.
Whether you're past 65 like the Gessicks or almost their ages, there are a few rules of the road to keep in mind. Basically, everyone needs a plan. First, figure out when it's best to claim Social Security. Next, fund an emergency reserve. Still working? Set aside 6 to 12 months worth of living expenses. Already retired? Make it 1 to 2 years worth. And keep that reserve in a safe, easily accessible interest-bearing account.
Like many working Americans, the Gessicks were more doers than savers. They drained their 401ks.
I think to us it felt more like a savings account than to focus on, I need to have this piled up to actually live on.
They have a mortgage, a car loan, and are paying down about $12,000 in other debt. But even with Social Security, some old pension funds, and their paychecks, money is tight.
All these expenses and the debt pay down leaves you with very little money every month, right?
Yes.
How much is that?
$50.
Had the Gessicks waited to age 70 to claim Social Security, they would be collecting more.
Can you look at a time where you feel like you can breathe a little more easily, or are you still under stress?
Yeah, it's stressful now, but I think we can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Getting there won't be easy. For Eye on America, Jill Schlesinger in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Social Security money is on the line for millions of Americans tonight. The Senate is working on a bill to provide full benefits to some former public sector employees who have been shut out of the program. The measure has already passed in the House. CBS's Katie Weiss reports from Louisiana.
For 33 years, Evelyn Paternostro worked as a teacher and public school principal in Louisiana. Now, at 84 years old, she works here 3 days a week as a cashier.
You know, people at the store ask me all the time, are you doing this for fun? Why aren't you retired?
After her husband died, she was denied his Social Security because of her public pension plan.
I was stunned, I was hurt, and I was mad.
Paternostro supports repealing the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset, two federal policies meant to make Social Security fair. But instead, she says, penalizes people who contributed to state government pension programs that did not withhold Social Security, leaving 2.8 million Americans with smaller checks or none at all.
So how much would you have made in Social Security checks every month?
$2,500.
And how much would that have been over these last 10 years?
I think $300,000. That's a lot of money.
The provisions are also causing another type of heartache.
I got a letter from Social Security and that I owed them a little bit more than $13,000.
In Illinois, retired school psychologist Dee Dee Rule says the Fed started reducing her benefits by nearly $300 a month. Our analysis of federal data found these policies are one of the most common reasons for Social Security overpayments, totaling more than $450 million.
I have been trying to appeal it through their process, and I've been denied at every level.
But critics say if the rules are repealed through the passing of the Social Security Fairness Act, it could drain the Social Security fund faster. To Paternostro, that's money she feels she's owed.
This money has been stolen from all of us for all these years.
Katie Weiss, CBS News, New Orleans.
The long road of recovery continues for thousands chased from their burning homes by the deadly Southern California fires in January. Most have vowed to rebuild and restart their lives, but for those survivors who thought they could enjoy their golden years, starting over poses its own challenge. Christine Lazar reports for tonight's In Depth.
Oh, for me, it was my life. I loved it. I loved my neighbors.
Bobby and Gerald Watkins plan to live out the rest of their lives at their home in the Palisades. She is 88. Gerald, a Holocaust survivor, just turned 97.
And we just thought, this is it. This is the life that we want to lead for the rest of our lives.
This is their condo now, one of the thousands of homes destroyed in the Palisades fire. The couple were the last in the complex to leave. What did you take with you?
Oh, far too little. She took a slightly larger overnight bag, and I took a very small overnight bag.
We really thought we'd be coming back.
Gone are their family photos. Thankfully, a relative had this copy from their wedding day. Their records also destroyed.
Birth certificates, marriage certificates, the entire lifetime of what one collects.
The couple feels this loss deeply.
When you've saved all your life and been prudent and managed to get a place that you feel you could live, where you could live for the rest of your life, and then poof, overnight, it's just gone. And you look around and say, what do I do now?
It's a common sentiment among older fire victims. Census data analyzed by CBS News found that about 21% of residents in the Eaton fire zone and about 26% of residents impacted by the Palisades fire are over 65.
And of course, everybody's being told to go online. The GoFundMe campaigns are not as familiar to that cohort in general.
Dr. Laura Mosqueda is a professor of geriatrics at USC's Keck School of Medicine.
The issue of starting over when you're at the end of your life is a large philosophical and existential issue, in addition to being a practical issue for older adults.
The Watkins are staying with friends. They're competing with thousands of other fire victims for housing, many of whom are younger and more tech savvy.
I'm just happy to be alive, I guess, and I'm very glad that you were able to interview us and tell our story.
A story now being rewritten. Christine Lazar, CBS News.
President Trump insists he is not touching Social Security, but he is touching Social Security jobs.
7,000 of the 57,000 jobs, or about 12%, are being eliminated. And Lana Zak tells us that has many of the more than 73 million recipients worried.
At the weekly senior lunch social in North Liberty, Iowa, chicken was on the menu, but Social Security was top of mind.
It's scary. What do we want the politicians in D.C. to know? This is our life.
Are you afraid of what might happen?
It's stressing, wondering what's going to happen.
Iowa, like the rest of America, is aging. 1 in 4 people here is 60 or older, so uncertainty in Washington means anxiety here.
Do you actually have nightmares about this?
I would say daymares.
Every day you're worried?
Every day I'm worried that somehow he'll lose his care.
Ann Bacon relies on the $1,600 a month from Social Security that pays for her brother Rick Clark's 24-hour care. He has dementia.
What is your name? The very first time I called, I was on the call for 3 hours on hold when the call dropped.
You were on hold for 3 hours and then the call dropped?
Yeah.
When the check didn't arrive in January, Bacon ended up on hold for 6 hours on 2 separate calls. Then the problem was resolved in minutes. We tried calling this afternoon.
The estimated hold time is greater than 120 minutes.
Wait times have long plagued the agency, and the average wait times have doubled in the last 6 months.
No one plans to become disabled, but the reality is that people do.
John Hale worked for Social Security for 25 years. He and his wife Terry are now advocates for older and disabled Iowans.
It's about retirement benefits, it's about survivors' benefits, and about payments to people with disabilities.
One of the things that concerns us, and I think concerns those people, is there's a bunch of billionaires who are making decisions about this service who will never need Social Security. They'll never have a family member who needs Social Security. They are out of touch with the real world.
And Lana Zak joins us now from Iowa City, Iowa. Lana, even before the Trump administration, Social Security was at a 50-year staffing low. And over the last 10 years, 13 million new Americans joined the system because they're baby boomers. So it was already under strain. What are the strains that folks you're talking to are talking about?
Well, they are concerned about any interruption to their benefits with those thousands of announced staff cuts, confusion about regional office closures, and now a new requirement that will take place in 2 weeks, forcing many of them to go in person to those offices to try and prove their identity and their citizenship. Their budgets are so tight. One woman told me that any interruption to that monthly check would mean that she wouldn't have the $5 to pay for that senior.
Up again, down again, stock prices. On again, off again, tariffs. Up again, and again, prices. It's enough to give current and future retirees motion sickness. Workers in the first quarter of the year saved a record 14.3% of their income for retirement, but the value of the average 401k fell by 3%. In tonight's Eye on America, Jill Schlesinger checks back with a couple we met last year as they were looking down the road to retirement.
Dinner at the Gomez home outside Boston provides a textbook image of the sandwich generation.
Here you go.
3 sets of relatives living under one roof.
A club sandwich has a lot of layers, and we have a lot of layers.
It's not the easiest way to save for retirement, as they told us when we first met them last year. Back then, their nest egg was healthy and growing. Stocks were climbing, hitting an all-time high by February of this year. But they cratered with the start of the trade war in April, only to climb back and recover most of the losses.
I feel like I'm on a roller coaster. You just hope that if we're going to be on the downturn now, will we be on the upturn when we decide to retire?
Today, like millions of Americans, Alicia, 57, and Chu, 59, are experiencing the waves of an uncertain, seesawing market.
There was about almost a 20% slide. Did you feel like you could go through that again?
I don't want to go through it again. If you're paying attention to the market, you're going through it every day.
43 million people are about that age.
These gyrations can trigger rash decisions, says labor economist Teresa Ghilarducci of the New School for Social Research.
We have a name for living through that kind of volatility, and it's called scarring.
How do I help those folks or prevent that scarring from causing them to act
in a way that's
detrimental?
In times of financial crisis, do not talk to your friends or your family about what to do. Take a breath, take a minute, and rely on expert advice.
Alicia, who holds down 2 jobs, had thought maybe she'd cut back work at 62. Chu, who works in logistics, thought 65. Now they've adjusted that mindset.
It's probably going to be 67 at least. I think there's still a lot of unknowns.
Right.
Would you stop putting money in your retirement accounts? Would you pull back on funding something else?
The first place would be pull back on the retirement funding, because we are, maxing that out.
Adding to their anxiety, fear that the Social Security system could run dry. There's been a 13% jump this year in people claiming retirement benefits early, despite permanently reduced payouts.
Would that then argue that you should claim Social Security early? Because
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. Wait for the maximum benefit. Don't haircut yourself now, anticipating it will be cut later.
The Gomezes say their retirement investments are up by about 3% this year, so they'll simply sit tight and work hard to hold on to their jobs.
You can only take so many hits. We don't have do-over time.
No.
In the long run, saving for retirement really is more like riding a roller coaster than a merry-go-round. For Eye on America, I'm Jill Schlesinger in Boston.
On any given night, more than 140,000 Americans 55 years or older experience homelessness, and it's estimated that number could nearly triple by 2030. In tonight's In Depth, CBS's Elise Preston reports on what's causing the surge and what's being done to address the growing crisis.
Good morning, Rose.
This is no ordinary house call.
It's Daniel from Healthcare in Action.
A medical team arrived at this RV to treat Rose Del Rosario, who is 65 years old and unhoused.
Let's go around the side because we got the little...
Her vitals are taken inside a medical van parked across the street. Del Rosario suffers from high blood pressure and lifelong asthma.
You were battling asthma without any treatment.
What I did was I would buy inhalers off people that were out here that found them in the trash.
Did you feel safe using those inhalers from...
Not really.
She says she had no money left after her husband died several years ago, and she wound up on the streets.
May I ask what it feels like to be navigating all of this at the age of 65?
It makes you feel older. I feel like it's aging me, you know. I feel like it's aging me a lot. Yeah, that's about it. It's just tiring. It's just hard to live like this.
According to a federal report, about 20% of people experiencing homelessness in America last year were 55 and older. It's usually caused by the death of a spouse, divorce, job loss, eviction, or mounting health issues. Daniel Speller is a physician associate for Healthcare in Action, a nonprofit organization that provides medical care and housing assistance for those without permanent shelter, including older adults.
You're not having any chest pain today? These are folks who are kind of entering the stage where they're starting to have, you know, multiple complex chronic medical conditions that need to be met, and they're just not being met. Heart disease, diabetes, a lot of pain, a lot of mental health issues. They're also the most vulnerable.
Dr. Indu Sabaya is Healthcare in Action CEO. She fears the impact rising costs and cuts to government programs like Medicaid will have on seniors.
If there are cuts to Medicaid, what happens to them?
I don't believe we should be cutting Medicaid for those populations. We should leave those intact, and that will be so helpful to people not falling further into the hole.
At 65, where did you think you would be for retirement?
In a nice, comfortable rocking chair, waiting for this casserole to come out of the oven. You know, I didn't think it would be like this.
Despite her struggles, there's a glimmer of hope, kindness, helping her survive. Elise Preston, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Homelessness in America has been steadily ticking up since 2019. Last year saw an 18% increase from the year before. As Elise Preston reported, older Americans are the fastest growing population of the unhoused. For tonight's interview, we are joined by Dennis Culhane, a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, whose research focuses on homelessness and assisted housing policy. Dennis, it's good to be with you. Thanks for being here. The first question is, why is the homeless population getting so much older?
Well, we've had this aging trend that's actually been going on for over 30 years. The population born between 1955 and 1965, that would be the second half of the baby boom generation, they have constituted the largest subsegment of the population since 1990. So what we're seeing is these folks are now between the ages of 60 and 70. And so there, of course, we're seeing all sorts of increases in elderly homelessness as a result.
And why are they uniquely vulnerable, or is it the fact that there are just more of them, you know, because of the baby boom and so forth?
Actually, both of those things are true, because there are more of them that put them at greater risk. And also, you know, they came of age in the early 1980s at a time when there was very high unemployment and housing costs were rising. And so a lot of these folks were unable to get into the labor market by their mid-20s. And so they've struggled for years trying to get a toehold in the workforce.
We saw in Elise's piece some of the physical issues that are associated with aging when you're unhoused. What other kinds of issues are a part of this cohort?
Well, right now, what's making them also at risk is that many of them have depended on their parents for housing for many years, or other relatives. And when one of those family members dies, they may lose access to their housing. So we're seeing one of the big reasons, the triggering event for many of these folks, is that they've depended on family who are passing away. But of course, being homeless exposes them to all sorts of, physical conditions and social conditions that make their life very difficult. And of course, it brings on all sorts of health conditions. And being prematurely aged, because although they may be 55, 60 to 70, they really look 15 years older than they otherwise would be. So we see a whole host of conditions that are making it much more difficult for them to get out of homelessness.
And what kind of public policy issues will that then compound, will that then create?
Well, we already see that we have large numbers of these folks in emergency rooms. The major impact is in healthcare systems, and they end up hospitalized at very high rates. They often can't be discharged in a timely fashion because they have no place to go back to and no family to support them. So they often will end up even in nursing homes, even though those nursing homes, they will often get discharged right back into homelessness.
The New Deal was, in theory, supposed to mitigate against this. What broke?
Well, first, there's a significant number of people who are not eligible for Social Security. They didn't work on the books, or they didn't accrue sufficient credits of paying into the Social Security system. So what they rely upon is a basic subsistence income that we have, which is really far below subsistence. It's called the SSI program, and it pays about $900 a month. And it's difficult to get into the program. And for old age, you're not eligible until you're 65. So a lot of these people are destitute, and they have no resources. And that was not the intention of the New Deal programs.
New data from the U.S. Census Bureau shows the number of Americans 65 and older climbed by more than 3% last year. And for the first time ever, older adults outnumbered children in 11 states. In 2020, that was the case in only 3 states. This change has been in the making for more than 60 years.
Good evening from our CBS newsroom in New York.
When Walter Cronkite debuted as the anchor of the CBS Evening News in 1962, the U.S. Census showed youngest and oldest age groups had grown 5 times faster than middle age groups in the decade before. As the population aged, the number of people relying on Social Security benefits increased. In 1970, more than 25 million people received benefits, a 4,000% increase from when the program was signed into law in 1935. In 1977, the same year the popular Mary Tyler Moore Show bid farewell, President Carter signed a bill that lowered the amount of money Social Security beneficiaries received.
Send me the information.
And today, in the era of tracker, Americans 65 and older steadily increased from 12.4% in 2004 to 18% in 2024, while children declined from 25% to 21.5%. Older Americans continue to outpace working-age adults, which could negatively impact the economy and the ability to keep those Social Security checks coming. Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins me now. So, Kelly, in simplest terms here, why is this happening?
Because a portion of that Social Security money could run out over the next decade. So how this works is that you and I are paying into a fund that gets distributed to folks that have already retired. Basically, the current workforce is paying for those that have already retired. This was working really well when the baby boomers were working because there were more people paying into this fund than there were people drawing on that fund. It created a surplus. Now, though, those folks are retiring, and there are more people that are drawing on that fund than there are paying into that fund. This is called the Social Security Trust, that surplus. It's being depleted, and the projection is 2033. That's going to go away.
Not a great situation. So what about the people counting on those checks right now and in the near term?
So right now you're okay. All right. This is a 2033 or beyond problem. It doesn't mean that there's no Social Security. It just means those checks are going to get smaller. My colleague Jill Schlesinger, she explained it to me this way. She said the average check might be $2,000. The projection is that the money that's currently being put into that fund is only going to account for 77% of what people expect. So you and I might only get $1,540 or so, and that's meaningful.
What about fixes that are out there?
Either you and I pay more of our income into Social Security now, or we raise the retirement age, neither of which people love.
Inflation has been moderating in recent months, but prices are still nearly 24% higher than at the start of the pandemic.
In our series, The Cost of Living, Americans are telling us about their struggles to make ends meet, and we conclude with a widow on Social Security. After rent, she has less than $200 to live on.
Here, kitty, 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 kitty. My name is Olivia Marino Carlson. I'm 70 years old. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I cannot afford to retire. I live off of Social Security, which does not pay all my bills. That's why I'm looking for work. My husband was a mechanic. He developed MS. I took care of him until he passed away. I was working retail, lifting boxes. It was very hard. I'm going to the library to use the internet to look for work. I did not think that being 70 would be like this. I'm asking if there's any positions or work positions available here.
We don't have anything open right now, but keep an eye on it.
I put in an application here at Walgreens. I haven't heard back, so I'm going to check to see what's going on. They don't have an update on my application. The cost of food has gone up. Every time I blink, it goes up. I get better prices here.
Your total's gonna be $10.25?
This is where I have a Bible study.
We thank you so much for this evening.
There are times when I do feel like giving up, and coming to this group helps me continue on.
Good. Right.
My greatest obstacle right now is being able to support myself. It is hard for me just to survive. I wish people in power would think more with their heart. It is hard for me to accept that I'm not able to enjoy the rest of my life because I have worked hard all my life.
Just heartbreaking, man.